we've already said that mining doesn't really employ enough people, even though it's doing well. I mean, what sectors do you think are the sectors to be in next year?
I expect higher levels of insolvencies next year. The SME sector is going to be where it's going to be focused.
Right.
So expect to see in some areas considerable numbers of failures. I'll give you an example on the Gold Coast. In the Gold Coast, there are a lot of people who are very reliant on the tourist sector. There are also a number of people who are completely reliant on Airbnb as a source of income for their investment properties, and they don't have enough, not enough people coming through at the moment. Another example, another sector is in the small business end of construction. So there are a lot of independent tradies. Now, there's quite a lot of new construction happening thanks to Home Builder, but it's not necessarily uniform across the whole country. And we're seeing quite a few tradies having to move into other areas to be able to be busy. Another area is retail, and I think retail is probably going to be the real bellwether. There are so many closures of small retail outlets. I'm seeing it everywhere I go, and that's another area that I think is going to be very concerning. And then the final one is the hospitality and restaurants and cafes. A lot of those have really struggled. I mean, hopefully they're beginning to see some, but a lot of them are already well underwater. So I think it's going to be the small ends of town rather than the big end of town. And I'd argue that JobKeeper really was top end of town keeper and bank keeper rather than real small businesses. So I would expect to see a lot of smaller businesses really fade away, and that's what my surveys are showing at the moment.
And are you projecting this early next year? Is it later in the year? Are we talking March quarter, June quarter?
I think it's going to take probably 6 to 12 months to work through. So if you look at the global financial crisis in both Europe and in the US, the crisis hit and then it sort of echoed down for 18 months to 2 years before it really hit the bottom. In fact, the bottom of house price falls and the height of delinquencies and failures was actually in year 2 and year 3. So I'm expecting that to be slightly quicker this time because the bounce back perhaps was a bit quicker, although it's still partial. We're still performing well below where we were. The unemployment rate's still a lot higher. And if you look at the last payroll numbers, they were way down compared with what people thought they were going to be. But I reckon it's going to be another year or so before we really see the full impact. So I keep saying to people, we are in the foothills of the financial crisis. We are not actually in the exit lane of the financial crisis, right, that we've just gone through. We're in the early stages of it, and it's going to get worse. Even the Reserve Bank's saying it's going to be 8-point-something% unemployment end of the year and 6.5% 2 years later if we're lucky.
But last week the deputy chair came out and said that the recession was over.
Yeah, well, I think that was a bit of an overreach, frankly.